2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock.
Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is for Haley 2024, The Movement's Government Reform Idea. So this is on the transition. So what I'm doing here is creating a new constitution for the United States, a new structure of government. I'm going to a more competitive governance model. It's going to give a lot more freedom and liberty, free enterprise in many aspects of what government's currently doing. So this is going to be the transition. I've done a lot of videos on this, probably about 4, maybe 6 dozen videos on this alone. So it's a long constitution. It's about 13, almost 14,000 words. So it's a lot to take in. It's a significant change. It's a modest proposal because we're going with a lot less government. It is going with as little of government as we possibly can get away with, while we're still having a good-sized military to fight off foreign foes, having a rule of law, doing the things that government's supposed to be doing, but doing it more through the free enterprise system. So let's talk about the transition. So before I can go to the transition, I need to give a quick overview of what the Constitution is, so you know where everything's going to fall into place. So let's go through it. The transition. And let's go through it real quick. We're going to have 30 sectors of government. Here's the first 15. Here's the second 15, but I'll come back to this. We're going to have 30 sectors where we split up all governmental authorities into 30 sectors, with top-level elected leaders per sector. So no one person is going to be over top of, let's say, family law and the military. Violent crime is going to have different people than the court system. Prison is going to have different people than the healthcare. The banking law is going to be different from the education laws. Human resources are going to be different from transportation. So we multiply the number of Congresses, the presidents, the Judiciary Department, the governors, state legislators, city councils, mayors, the city courts. We multiply them by 30. We don't multiply the power. We divide the power up and to put about 3 to 4% in each of the sectors of the responsibilities. Obviously, some are going to be a lot more dollars than others. Some are going to be very small dollars, some are going to be very large dollars. But the responsibilities of governmental responsibilities, roughly 3 to 4% per sector. So no one person can be in charge of more than one sector. We still have the local, state, and federal levels of government. So that does not change. But we take a lot away from the federal. We don't give federal that much. Foreign policy, and that's about it. Now, every sector can have some things go up to have, let's say, the FBI and the like, or a national approach to some environmental laws and the like. But we don't have to put too much at the federal level. We constitutionally mandate that at the state level, and we have probably about 2 to 3, maybe 4 times as many states under this new system as we currently have. The whole system is going to be probably between 100 and 200, maybe 300 states. So we're going to get them all somewhere between like 700,000 to maybe 2 million. So California, San Francisco being its own state. LA might turn into 2 or 3 states. New York City, Dallas, Texas, Chicago, they'll all be 1 or 2 states each. As long as you can have over 500,000 people, or really I try to limit to 700,000. So anywhere between 1 million to 2 million is my target for the states. Now the states get to decide it. The localities, that geographic area gets to decide it. But that's in there as well. So we go down to much smaller governments. So people feel like they have a voice in their government. But the bigger change is this one right here. This is going to be within each sector, at every level of government, you get to pick who's going to govern you. You have to be governed, so you have to pick one. But you select from roughly 12. Now, Heritage Foundation people might group together. Brookings Institute people might group together. Democrat Party, Libertarian Party, Republican Party, Constitution Party, all those people will group together with like-minded people. Once you group together, then you vote for your leaders inside your group. So the conservatives will pick their leader, liberals will pick their leaders, the leftists will pick their leaders, socialists will pick their leaders. Everybody picks their leaders. And they govern only their members. When I say govern, I mean regulations, taxes, benefits, the whole 9 yards. They have full governmental system of executive, legislative, and judicial powers. The rating system is going to give high quality information from a wide variety of perspectives. Wide variety of perspectives means a rating, you're going to have about 12 different rating agencies to select from. Each one with a little bit of perspective, different perspective of how you should rate, what your endpoint should be, how should you get to your endpoint, what you should be looking at, putting things in context, and the like. So it's going to give a lot of perspective. So you're going to have a lot of information, a lot better information. You're going to have competing information givers. So, and when I say that, competing information givers, you select the one that you like the best. So let's keep on going, and the citizenship is going to be a section. General laws, bylaws are internal governmental rules for internal organizations within the CRA structure. Federal, state, and local, how that's structured. Original authority, just the notion of how do we get laws in the first place. What level of government, what level of the CRA structure has a top level of authority in that section. Supermajority, if it's monopolized, it has to be 70%. It's going to keep it down to the CRA level. So some things need to go monopolized, no doubt about it. The two societal oversight roles, for the one more domestically for the police and the prisons and the courts, that'll be one, and then another one will be a military foreign policy. They have to be authorized as well. Anybody with inherent government power has to get it from the 70% of the people. So we cannot have people going off the rails and going in a bad way. So let's keep on going. The Parent Sector Board, how that's structured, and their responsibility is to separate all government power into 30 sectors and draw those lines nice and neat. The sector board is to take within your sector, let's say education, environment, land and water, police, prisons, whatever the case may be, family law, charities. We deal with that. But that they make sure they have their 12 or so CRAs. All you have to do is get 5% of the citizens of your geographic area to join with you in the competitive regulatory agencies, and you get to be governed by that one organization, only governing the people who join. You have to join one, so you have to be governed, but you select who's going to be governing you. And again, executive, legislative, and judicial. Highly important to understand. The rating system is a full, big system. You look at those videos. It's just that it is as extensive as a CRA structure. The same structure is on the rating system side. It's going to be able to stop a lot of significant negative externalities with rating floors and give high quality information. Taxation, dealing with how everything's funded. It's going to be funded by CRA fees. Every CRA is going to have their own fee. There's going to be a lot of associations. There's going to be 180 associations. Seems like a lot. Seems like it's overwhelming. I have ways to manage that without a big problem. One sector is going to manage the whole thing. One company that you have, identity company, is going to be able to manage all that, all your elections, all your fees, everything together. It's going to be able to manage a lot of that. So debt, how do we do a transition from the current system to the next system? We sell off all government assets to the free enterprise system or to the CRAs, and then they take on that debt. But that payment for selling that stuff off, plus other taxes and other things we do, is all in there, will bring worth to everything that we have considered government debt right now. We sell off school buses to schools, to roads, to aircraft carriers, to Army bases, to police stations. We sell it all. Pockets of freedom is immigration and foreign policy. I'm not going to get into that on this video too much. This is about to transition to the main thing, but it's an important sector or section. State's partial acceptance per sector is to help this thing get passed, and the separation of responsibilities and authority is one of my key core reforms. It's not as important as a CRA reform. That's the main one. Competitive governance is the main thing, but having the separation, because somebody might be, hey, I'm more liberal when it comes to family law, but a lot more conservative when it comes to banking law. I might be very hawkish when it comes to being a diplomat, But when it comes to the police, I want them to pull back, and I don't want them to be very hawkish. You get to pick per sector. Your vote is more specialized per sector. But it's not going to just be the vote. It's going to be your selection, then like-minded people, then vote. So it's going to be super important. Let's go over it real quick. We're going to go over all 30 sectors, but remember this green on every one of the sectors. You choose your CRA. You choose your RA per all 30 sectors for the local, state, and federal government. That's where it gets to be 90. On the rating system side, another 90, 30 per level of government. So it is a lot. I totally understand it's a lot. But there's ways to manage that. It's all within the system. Sector 25, identity and personal and business, is going to be a major part of the transition. So that's where some of the clauses are for this. Then I'll be doing other clauses throughout. So a Sector 25 CRA must, which is identity sector, ensure all entities, which means citizens, businesses, organizations, that's defined within the Constitution, are members of a CRA and RA in all 30 sectors in the federal, state, and local CRA structures. So you have to pick them. You have to pick your CRA 25 first. Then they make sure you pick the other ones. So you have to be governed. You have to have your voice heard. You don't have a choice on that. If you want to be a citizen, you have to be governed. It creates a negative externality for you not to be governed within family law. It creates a negative externality for you not to be governed and have police protection. It creates a negative externality for you not to help pay for the prisons or help or educate your children. There's a lot of negative externalities. The reason that you have to is select a CRA in all 30 sectors is because it creates a negative externality for society at large for you not to be governed in certain areas. You can be a libertarian type of government where you do things on your own and the government doesn't do much besides the light regulation. But it must make sure you are taking care of what needs to be happening within that one sector. You have to be educating your children in this sector. In the family law, they have to regulate divorce and marriage and elder care and minor responsibilities and stuff like that. So there's a lot to it. Each one of I got videos on all of them. I can't get into every one of those right now, but that's why you have to be governed. Okay, Sector 25, identity sector. Your selected CRA. Okay, they are responsible for ensuring and coordinating CRA fees, tax obligations, and debt repayments. So I talked about the CRA fees, but they can also assist with tax obligations and debt repayments. They are actually responsible for making sure you are doing what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, there'll be clauses within your agreement with them and that you automatically go work for charities until you can pay for your tax obligations or your debt repayments or whatever. And those charity hours that you put in will go towards paying that off as well. But you have to immediately start, if you miss a payment, you have to immediately start doing something. You cannot be jipping somebody out, stealing from them from the money that you owe them. You made an agreement to borrow $10,000 for a car and you're not able to pay it back. There has to be a consequence, and part of the agreement is that you start working in the charity economy or whatever the contract says. Right here it doesn't say that right now, but they'll probably have that in a lot of contracts soon, the way the charity system is going to work. Okay. Within the full CRA structure and properly distributed. So your Sector 25 CRA, they'll make sure the money goes to the right spot and the whole 9 yards there. Sector 25 would handle all elections. So they're going to handle all elections. You're going to have a lot more elections than we currently have, like times 30. But once you select your CRA, you can kind of almost take a hands off. Hey, I'm with a whole bunch of conservatives, or I'm with a whole bunch of liberals. I'm with a whole bunch of people who love Bernie Sanders, or a whole bunch of people who love Ted Cruz, or Barack Obama. Or I'm not going into who you might love or who you might not love, but I'm already with them, and let them govern me, and I don't have to do too much. So you can do that, and you can pick per sector. Like I said, you might be liberal when it comes to land and water, but very conservative when it comes to education and vice versa. So each sector you could select your Sector 25. So you don't have to go with the Heritage Foundation affiliated CRA for environmental and also police. You can swap out, and you have roughly 12 per sector. So you have a lot of choices, 180 choices to be exact. Okay, let's keep on going. But they're responsible for the election, and there's a whole system for that. This is important for the transition. The term current government in this amendment is defined as elected seated legislators or executives at the time this amendment is ratified. I might need to add in judicial, but anyway. The date of ratification is defined as the day the 38th state ratifies this amendment. The ratification of this amendment stops any further elections in the old constitutional system, and current elected leaders remain through the 5-year transition period. So if you are elected while this is ratified, then you stay for 5 years, and we keep on going. Okay, but there's no more elections. Okay, all current government officials lose all governmental authority 5 years after ratification. So it's a 5-year term. You are locked in, and there will be a system for if somebody wants to resign, who's the next in line coming up through the current laws and the like. Okay, so if a governor quits, the lieutenant governor takes his place and stuff like that. There's a line of transition already. We'll keep that for the 5-year transition period. Okay, all government officials lose their government authority after 5 years of after ratification. Okay, failure to make timeline deadlines triggers the Section 5 multi-step voting system. So if current legislators choose not to do something that the Constitution is telling them to do, it triggers a multi-step voting system that has to have a 2-month conclusion with a 50% vote. And the sector boards, once they're set up, within a couple months actually, they're part of that multi-step voting system. So let's keep on going. So there's a system. There's language in there to address all the issues. And we have people to do with the timeline. Okay, the transition timeline from ratification. The current government must set up a system where every American can select a Sector 25 CRA within 2 months. So when we start this and it gets ratified, we start rocking and rolling. The first thing is you select your Sector 25 CRA. From there, a whole bunch of things are going to happen. So that has to be done very rapidly. So the money for that will come from the current government for the first 6 months. But let's keep on going. But they have to get that off the ground immediately, so people can start picking their CRAs. Every current government legislator must appoint initial CRA leaders in all 3 branches of every sector to create CRAs within 2 months. So every current legislator, local, state, and federal, depending on which ones you are, you do the state or the local or the federal CRA appointees per sector. So within 2 months, we're going to have groups of CRAs. And we're going to have the legislative, executive, and we're going to have judicial branches or seats within that. So 2 months is going to be very rapidly. CRA leaders must create their CRA sector boards and the parent sector boards within 4 months. So we're rocking on this. We're moving. It's 4 months. I mean, so they have deadlines to hit. Now, they don't have any power yet. They don't get to govern the people yet. This is set up only. So during this time, I might say they're setting things up, but they're looking over legislation. They're looking over regulations. They're looking over what their philosophy is. So the Heritage Foundations or the Brookings Institute will be going full speed. Okay, the people like us. I had 16% of the people join us. What legislation do we want to put out there? What policies do we want? Now, a citizen, they can change their CRA. Hey, I see how they're setting up. I don't like it. I like how this other one's setting up. I can switch over. So that's going to happen. So there's going to be some lot of flow from citizens back and forth. Okay. So okay. Let me make sure. Okay. So not just citizens, but businesses and organizations need to pick theirs quickly. Citizens, organizations, and businesses must select CRAs within 4 months and start paying CRA fees 4 months after ratification. So that 4 month mark, you're paying CRA fees. Now, they're not going to be governing you yet. They're not going to be paying for your police yet. They're not going to be paying for inspectors yet. You're just setting up the structure. So it's going to be minimal cost, but you're going to start actually paying fees 4 months after ratification. The parent sector board must finalize sector board lines of jurisdiction. So they have to define the difference between insurance and the financial sector. That's going to be kind of tricky on that one. Other land and water versus environmental. That might be a little bit of gray lines in there. Other one's going to be very distinct. The prison's going to be distinct from the police. So that's already distinct, but they'll make sure the lines are drawn. Okay. The parent sector board must finalize sector board lines of your jurisdiction within 6 months. So they'll have broad lines, kind of like how I already set it up. Okay, every sector board and the current government must have a transition of power timeline within 8 months. So they have to begin their timeline. And that has to be for the sector, at the local, the state, and the federal. And obviously the local is going to have to organize with the state to have similar timelines. Because that's going to matter, because sometimes local it will be blurred with state. Now hopefully they're going to not merge the state and the local too much like they do now. They merge all 3 levels of government way too much right now. Okay, every sector board and the current government must have a transition timeline within 8 months, and no governing power can be transferred to CRAs until 1 year after ratification. So the timeline cannot start until the 1 year mark after ratification. It doesn't have to start then. It can start 2 years later. Hopefully they're going to start right there at 1 year, but they have to have their timeline done. And so that is a deadline they have to meet. And if they don't meet it, they have to go to that multi-step voting system, and they have 2 months to do it. I'm sorry. So there is a system for this. Okay, CRA leadership and representative votes must occur every 3 months for the first 2 years, and then yearly for the next 10 years. The current government may only fund CRA expenses for the first 6 months. So you might say, hey, you put current government leaders, appointed leaders to the CRAs, and we're stuck with them. No, every 3 months you're going to have a vote for your CRA leadership. So the citizens who join this, let's say the Brookings Institute CRA, they're going to say, I don't like any of the appointees. We voted in people. These are actual people voting for new leadership. They're actual representatives now for that CRA. So let's keep on going. So within 3 months, any of the current appointees can be all gone. Now, if you like them, keep them. But they at least got the vote from the people. And this is before they actually got governing power. This is at 3 months, at 6 months, at 9 months, at 1 year. This is before they are actually governing. Okay, selected other clauses. So outside of Sector 25 is what I'm going with now. So this is more at the beginning. This amendment, CRA Article 1, Competitive Regulatory Agency, CRA Structure, that's one big term right there, is a complete replacement for the U.S. Constitution, every state constitution, and creates distinct local constitutions in America. Now I say distinct because you normally you have city charters or however localities do it in your state. This will create this is one constitution that has federal language, state language, and local language. So everyone will have this one constitution, but it is a distinct government per locality, distinct government per state, distinct government for the one United States of America. This new constitution creates 3 levels of government with 1 federal government, many state governments, and many local governments within each state. So each government is still going to be distinct governing bodies. And within that distinct governing body, split between 30 sectors. And within each sector, split between roughly 12 CRAs with the 5% and 20% limitations on how big the CRA can be. When this amendment is ratified, every current American citizen has a right for 2 years to sign the CRA Social Contract, which means that's what you need to become an American. So if you're already an American, you have to sign the CRA Social Contract saying, I choose to stay an American and I agree with the social contract. And if not, you're not a citizen of the United States anymore, which means you don't have the right to be on this land that we jointly own together. And I know that might be controversial, but I think a social contract is a better way of going. So people put their John Hancock, their signature on the line saying, I agree with this. Now you can always renounce your citizenship. You can always leave and not become an American citizen. There's a structure for that, or there's a clause in here for that. American citizens must sign the CRA Social Contract to remain an American citizen. Again, I know that's controversial, and let's keep on going. But you're not kicked out. Everybody has a right to sign. But everybody has to deal with the current government we currently have right now. So it's not going to change in that aspect. You're just going to get a lot more choices, a lot more freedom, a lot more liberty. Okay, once this amendment passes, the current government, the sector boards, and the parent sector board have broad powers in a 5-year window to implement a transition plan consistent with moving towards this CRA structure. So very important that we have broad powers, so they don't have to stay within constitutional guidelines, but it has to be consistent with moving towards this CRA structure. So we have the current Supreme Court, state Supreme Courts, all sorts of courts, and very soon, within a year, we're going to have a CRA court, the Parent Sector Board, the Judicial Department, judicial sectors, legislative and judicial, and other branches that's going to be able to have real power in determining whether the transition plan is consistent with moving towards this. Now, it has to have due process. It has to be fair. There's a lot to it, but we have a lot of governing body, a lot of representative bodies that's going to make sure this is done right. So the federal parent rating system must determine whether the transition plans are consistent with moving towards the CRA structure, and that might be at that 8-month mark. We'll have that body in place there. They can't govern over people, but this is not governing over people. This is determining whether transition plans is consistent. So they'll be on par with the federal Supreme Court at that point, and however they work it out, whenever one has a little bit more power, can make that final decision. But we're just talking whether it's consistent with moving towards that CRA structure. And there will be within this structure a top decision maker, by the way. All laws, regulation, and I was going back and forth a little bit because there's going to be a lot of variations, but the structure allows a top decision maker at any one point, or a good representative body. Okay, all laws, regulations, spending, and taxing from government before this amendment was passed are void after the 5-year transition period. CRAs adopt all current laws and regulations within their jurisdiction unless this amendment addresses the law or CRA directly, or CRAs directly address that law and regulation. So it's highly important to understand all the laws and all the current laws go away. The CRAs kind of adopt all the current laws, but then they can change it significantly to deal with the way they want to be governed. So look at that. Look at the other CRA structure. Look at everything to determine all your questions and see if it answers all your questions. Okay, members of CRAs from all 30 sectors send representatives to make up the Parent Sector Board, and representatives from all the CRAs within a sector proportionally make up their CRA Sector Board. So it's important to understand how sector boards are made up and parent sector boards are made up. And that's creating the system. Every entity within the governed area must select to become a member of a CRA and RA in all 30 sectors of their local, their state, and their federal CRA structures. So I kind of already said it, but this is the clause that says that you have to do it. You have to become a member. It's a must. As you sign on the dotted line your CRA social contract to stay an American citizen, it has inherent benefits, but it does have obligations. Every entity must pay the fee of membership for their CRA in every sector. So you start going to have to pay those fees. It's important that we currently pay for government. We currently have $8 to $9 trillion worth of government spending. That's federal, state, and local. Federal government's jacking that up too much in the year 2020 and 2021. And hopefully we can get it down. But we only have 110 million households this money can come from, and the businesses surrounding that. But per household, if you just look at it per household, that's somewhere between about $80,000 average per household. Now, obviously, big corporations are paying that, but the only place that money can come from the big corporation to pay that is from transactions of that corporation selling you product. That means that's coming from everybody. Or let's say the rich are paying for it. Well, the only place the rich can get their money is transactions with everybody that they sell product to. Everybody has to voluntarily give over money to a rich person, to that rich corporation, or to that business. The people who are paying the bulk of the taxes right now, it is very important to understand that they are going to be, that those taxes are only paid out of the transaction cost there. So it's very important to understand there. So, okay, Section 12, debt deals with a little bit of the transition. I'm not going to do all the clauses. I have videos out there that do all this. The Parent Sector Board of the federal, state, and local governments must take ownership of all government assets and liabilities as defined in the 5-year transition plan. So that's very well defined there. The government assets are roughly equally separated into at least 100 publicly owned corporations in each relevant sector. The Parent Sector Board would own all the stocks. So government's going to take ownership. The CRA structure is going to take ownership of all the assets. You're going to have to pay off the debt, but they're going to sell off this stuff dollar cost average 1% a month. So look at that video. I'm not going to go too much into that. The Insurance Sector Board must create a responsible transition from Social Security and Medicare by fulfilling promises consistent with the following relevant clauses and this amendment through the 5-year transition period. Both the current taxes and benefits will cease. So there will be a transition there. And there will be that's part of the transition plan, and plus there's clauses in there that they have to fulfill, which brings in more money and limits how much is going to be put into fulfilling promises. The education sector must create a responsible transition from all government-funded education. So that's something that should have never been on education at the government level, but it is, and we need to create a good transition away. But if you want to stay with the public school system, join a CRA that says we're going to stay with the public school system. Then you can do that. But all the taxes, all the funding for that has to come from only the members that join that. So it's very important to understand it's not a monopolized, socialized system anymore once we go into this. Within your CRA, you can do whatever you want to. You can join whatever CRA and have whatever policies you want to have. It's your CRA. We switch to a full charity system. We get rid of welfare altogether. 100%. We have about 5% of GDP mandated to be donated to this, which is going to be a lot of money to help the poor. That's a significant amount of money. $1 trillion, or about roughly $1 trillion, or 5% of GDP. It's going to be enough to help the poor, especially when the poor are going to be working to help the other poor. Every time we're providing for somebody, or a good amount of times when we're providing for somebody, we're going to ask that person to help others within the system. That's what a charity does. That's what a good charity should do. Is if we're going to help you, we want you to come and work and help somebody else out. It's all within that charity system. Look at those videos. The foreign protection system is going to have a pretty interesting transition. There's going to be a lot of free enterprise into this. We're talking many trillions of dollars of military assets out there. Probably, maybe even going into the 10 trillions of dollars. I don't know what that number is going to be, but that's going to be paying off a lot of debt. Every aircraft carrier, every battleship, every satellite, every missile, every land base, the land on it, the buildings, all that's worth a lot of money. We're selling that off. We're selling that to the free enterprise system, to military corporations. All 100% heavily accountability. This military authorization agency is going to be very heavy accountability for the whole system. It's not going to go bad. We're going to have really good financial rules to make sure somebody can't do a lot of self-dealing and do a lot of wrong there. So let's keep on going. Violent crime is going to be the prosecutors, the definition of violent crimes, that sector dealing with violent crime. Law enforcement is, we're doing private police. We're doing law enforcement authorization, which is our same thing as the military authorization, but this is for domestic. They have to, anybody with inherent government police power, they have to be authorized and get their badge from this organization. It's a representative agency. The private court system, a lot more accountability, a lot better due process, a lot better and more efficient and productive processes. Prisons and corrections, again, private. You have to pay your CRA fees to fund this. There's a whole system in there. Everything's going to be funded. There's some mandates to fund. There's clauses in there. Everything's going to be working well here. Healthcare, we're going to transition over. Mostly this transition is simply the CRAs. It's going to regulate healthcare. The rating system is going to be phenomenal in this one. The rating system is going to be great in everywhere, but I can really see a lot of really good things about the rating system being really good here. The financial, which is banking and financial things, our monetary policy is phenomenal. That transition is going to be phenomenal, and look at those videos to see how we're going to transition the money. We go to competitive money. We put worth to all the current dollars, and then all the current dollars will be worthless after the transition. We put worth to it. We give you assets. We create a backed up money with our current money and with assets. And anyway, look at that transition. There's a lot to it. Insurance, I talked about that. Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid is for the poor. That's going to be within the charity system. So that goes away, but the charity system will transition over to a system to help the poor. The Medicare for the elderly and the Social Security, so just talked about that. A transition for that. Food, we're going to regulate food just like we do now, but it'll be competitive. So you're going to have competitive food regulatory bodies. So it's not FDA because that's part drugs, but dealing with food regulations, which needs to happen. So that's still there. Education, very private. Anybody who was educated by the government and the government paid for their education, they're going to have to pay taxes for a while longer to help pay off some of the long-term debt because government paid for your education. From now on, people are going to either pay for it directly or they're going to have long-term loans for their K through 12 and college loans. We're going to get monopolize government out of the system significantly, or all the way. Well, I say significantly because the sector board can do a little bit, but education, not too much. Manufacturing, we need regulations in it, no doubt about it, but it's going to be competitive. Human resources and sales, as a taxing sector, they're going to have to come up the state level. Sector 24 CRAs and sector is going to have to come up with 5% of GDP or their portion of GDP, or there's a lot to deal with that. I'm not going to try to get into precise words, but I do within the videos there and on my website. Everything's on my website. But that one's going to collect money for the military. 5% of GDP is going to go towards foreign protection system. Identity, putting a lot of responsibilities into the identity. This is the one that's going to collect all your CRA fees. It's going to do all your elections. It's going to be the one that makes sure that you belong to all of your CRAs, all of your RAs. So it's highly important dealing with citizenship, dealing with ownership, and a lot of different things. A lot of records, personal records, medical records, financial records. It has to deal with a lot. We give a lot of really good privacy protections in there, but let's keep on going. Environmental, work safety, transportation. Okay, environmental and work safety, that's just transitioning. CRA is going to be able to do a lot of really good stuff there. The rating system is going to do phenomenal for the environment, where you can see on the point of purchase some of the environmental standards. Work safety and disability, again, it's going to be a little bit of a catch-all. That seems like a small one, but it's going to be a little bit of a catch-all for a lot of different regulatory bodies that are just doesn't fit neatly into any one of these. Transportation, totally private roads. There's a natural market for roads. People want to drive. People want to get from point A to point B. We still have to do the public spaces, public accommodations. Anybody can drive on the road as long as they have a license. Anyway, there's a lot to it, but look at that video. Media and communication is going to be, again, a little bit of a catch-all for a lot of regulatory bodies out there that are not in there. But that's going to deal with free speech, dealing with TVs, radios, just a little bit more than that. But it's going to be a little bit of a catch-all for a lot of different things that are out there, a lot of miscellaneous regulatory bodies. Land and water, I just did that video. Look at that. It's going to deal with city ordinances. It's going to deal with a lot of different things, but all land and water has to be privately owned, not by government. It can be done by the CRAs. It can be done, we mandated some publicly traded corporations, and we mandate some public spaces and nature parks and the like. So let's continue on. Pretty much done with this video. The transition is important, and but the destination is more important. But we have the transition to get us there needs to be smooth, going from the current system to the new system. It can't just be a full falling down of the past system, and it's very, very difficult to build something new. So the transition is highly valuable. We're going to take everything that we currently have and slowly do a slow transition. So we're going to take our assets, our people, from what we currently do with, let's say, roads or taxes or identification. We're going to take those same people and let them be kind of the sector board, and then overseeing and have them incorporate into the CRAs. So you have that expertise, you have that governing body, but very rapidly within 5 years, that timeline, that transition timeline is going to be so important. But you're going to keep that expertise, you're going to keep that structure, you're going to keep that governmental bodies there. So because it is so difficult to build something new. Okay. Everything's so easy to find on my website. This is one of my very last ones on the Constitution. I will do a question and answer one, but I've done probably 5, 6, 7 dozen videos now on the Constitution, and everything you saw here, I've done a good half hour to hour, sometimes a little bit over hour-long videos on. So I have a lot of hours of video on there describing everything. But the Constitution is a little bit under 14,000 words. So look at that. It's on my website. And this is late July 2021 right now. So in August 2021, my focus is to revamp that website, rewrite some of my front pages, incorporate a lot of this language from the Constitution into there. So anyway, consider a donation to the Haley 2024, the movement. I've hired my first editor slash social media person, and not a lot of hours right now, but I need the money to help pay for this one person to help organize and edit and do social media for Haley 2024, the movement. And I would also, I'm in sales right now. I would love to get out of this, out of sales, and move directly into Haley 2024, the movement. But I need about 75% of my current pay to do a transition over so I can still make a living. Anyway, until the next video.